Tonight, I wanted to talk to you about a lot of things. Firstly, we're going to cover the responses coming internationally and from Israel after the move from the ICC to issue arrest warrants against the war criminals, Yoav Gallant and Benjamin Netanyahu. The responses coming from inside of Israel and the responses coming from global countries, who's going to comply and who's not going to comply. The second thing that I want to talk to you about is Lebanon. We have very important developments from Lebanon. Now Hezbollah are reaching the southern parts of Israel. They are expanding the reach, and Israel has no answer to the continued missile attacks coming from Hezbollah. And I also wanted to talk to you about this guy that was killed in Lebanon, this archaeologist. I'm going to give you some details about him. And I also want to talk to you about what's happening in Gaza. But firstly, we're going to start off with the most important thing. I mean, the main event, really. The ICC issuing arrest warrants against Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant. Now, for those of you who are interested to know all about it, I had quite a comprehensive video earlier on today, just after the news came out, with details about the actual arrest warrants, who were they against, the general responses and coverage, what the details are when it comes to the official statement of the ICC, and what to expect following that. So you can go ahead and watch that. But of course, I'll give you brief details when it comes to this, and primarily I'm going to be focusing on the responses in this video. So we did have responses coming from Israel, and of course, they're going to be blaming everything on the ICC, right? Of course, they're not at fault. It's the ICC, the International Court. They must have something wrong, and the world is wrong, and so here's just a couple of the responses. The Prime Minister called the warrants a modern Dreyfus trial, and attributed extraneous motives to the prosecutor accused of sexual harassment. The opposition, of course, also condemned the opposition, right? Lapid is saying a reward for terrorism. Bennett, previous PM as well, who should be ashamed? The members of the court and not the leaders of Israel. And of course, Benny Gantz saying that it's moral blindness and disgrace, and Ben Gvir saying, yeah, we should basically now announce sovereignty over the West Bank. I'm not sure how that's related, but he always likes to say that. So clearly, them blaming the international court and all of the countries globally that they're wrong and Israel cannot be wrong and they have to be anti-Semitic and the whole world hates us and all of the, broken records. But the interesting thing came from the international responses. Now, in my previous video, I told you about the countries that were actually siding with Israel to apply pressure on the ICC to give in, to just let it go, not accuse Israel of anything, which reached a level of directly threatening Karim Khan. And we, of course, had the United States senators, some of them sending a letter, an open letter, blatantly open letter, threatening the ICC chief prosecutor, warning him and his family, alongside the death threats that the man got. The British government, of course, also tried to help Israel. The previous British government said they have no jurisdiction. They start acting like they're ignorant, when it comes to international law. And even now, we don't have a lot of clarity. The spokesman for the British Prime Minister is saying, we recognize the independence of The Hague. And Kid Starver, the crime sinister, saying that, oh no, there's no comparison between, Israel and Israel as a democracy. trying to protect them. But that wasn't the case from the EU. The EU said it's compulsory to follow the orders. And the Netherlands said if these two people set foot in the Netherlands, they will be arrested. Likewise, similar statements came from Belgium and from Ireland as well. The Canadian Prime Minister, the same thing. So it's getting tighter on Benjamin Netanyahu. Now, these things, they matter a lot, especially coming from countries. And Italy, by the way, the defense minister also said similar things. These things are very important when it comes to Israel. They're not used to this level of pressure, of international pressure. And now they are clearly worried, and that's why they're acting like, like they're on a rant, and, complaining about the ICC and the world instead of looking in the mirror. So that's when it comes to the ICC, and this thing is going to be an ongoing case, by the way. I'll tell you from now why. Because firstly, we're expected to see Benjamin Netanyahu remaining as the Israeli prime minister. He is not looking to give up his power. Secondly, and most importantly, these cases in the ICJ and in the ICC, they set a precedent. And the precedent in the legal world is extremely important. They will start using this as an example. And with the cases, with the ICJ and with the ICC, they were based on very limited evidence and information. More information can be added, more evidence can be added, and more people can be included. So far, we're only talking about the prime minister and the defense minister. The levels of criminals of Israel are much higher than and much more than Benjamin Netanyahu and Yoav Gallant, meaning, well, Benjamin Netanyahu is going to continue to face this problem if he remains as the prime minister. Yoav Gallant is not going to have freedom of movement. And when it comes to the rest, really, they are at risk of having anything being started up against them as soon as they set foot in a country that can take action against them. And this country, by the way, can be a country that doesn't get included in the jurisdiction of the ICC. And usually you have 125 countries operating where the ICC has jurisdiction. All of them have to, according to international law, comply. The ICC relies heavily on compliance from member states. However, it also extends to other countries. So if they feel like they're safer in another country, they can find it problematic. Likewise, even with the United States. Now, the United States is not a signatory at all. They don't recognize the jurisdiction of the ICC. They just like using them whenever it suits them. But also in the United States, you have differences between states within the United States of America. So even if Benjamin Netanyahu feels like, he might be safe in one state, that's not necessarily going to be the case with a different state in the United States. And let's say Benjamin Netanyahu went away and we have a new Israeli prime minister or a new Israeli leader. Well, similar action could be taken against him. Now, most of them served in the Israeli army, and there are many, many, many war criminals, people who committed genocide and massacres and barbaric actions against the Palestinian people, the Lebanese people, and against people in the region and globally too. So this is a very big problem, and this will be something that's going to be haunting Israel. As a matter of fact, I believe this is another step in the way to dismantle Israel as a whole. We've had the year of their legitimacy slowly being stripped, including by allies, and now with these arrest warrants after the ICJ case, they are officially a war criminal entity, a country committing war crimes with arrest warrants being issued against its top figures. This is something very symbolic, and even if we don't see short-term enforcement or immediate enforcement, this is something that will be haunting Israel. This is another step in dismantling the state of Israel and Zionism as a whole. That's the first thing that I wanted to talk to you about. The second thing that I wanted to talk to you about is this fella. This fella, Zeev Ehrlich. Zeev Ehrlich. He, this genocider, this war criminal, was killed by Hezbollah fighters. Israel was temporarily present in an area with archaeological evidence in Lebanon, thinking it's a safe haven. However, 2 fighters from Hezbollah popped up, and they took him down alongside other terrorists that were illegally invading a sovereign entity called Lebanon and killing innocent civilians and wreaking havoc and destroying homes. Who is this man? Yeah, not a lot of information has been published about him. That's why I wanted to talk to you about him. This man, you know, when we talk about the pseudo-history of Israel, they create a pseudo-history, a pseudo-narrative, fake stuff up, make things up. They'll go to a grave that belongs to a Muslim sheikh, for example, or a Christian monk or something, and then all of a sudden name it with a Jewish name and call it, oh yeah, see, that's evidence of Israel being here. So this man is an archaeologist who is a very, very profound supporter of the squatting establishment in the West Bank. And he always tries to find evidence or create evidence, because there's no evidence we're talking about. This is these people are came from abroad not long ago, to justify Israeli presence. Why was he in Lebanon? He went to Lebanon to try and find archaeological evidence that will relate the land of Israel to Lebanon. So, we were speaking about the settlements movements in Israel saying that South Lebanon is Israeli territory. It's important in the Bible, and God promised it to us. So, flexible promises, it's not like a solid promise only in one place. No, the promise is flexible. It's open for interpretation. It started in Palestine, it can stretch to Sinai, Lebanon, Syria, Saudi Arabia, Turkey, I don't know, China, then later on. So this man was one of them, and he went to try and find archaeological evidence to support, Israeli presence in ancient times in Lebanon. Fortunately, he didn't find anything, and he found his demise there, and he went back in a coffin to the genocide. This man is another example of the desperation of the genocide entity to try and find any sort of proof that would link it to the land that it occupies. It started with primarily, the main archaeological work is under Al-Aqsa Mosque in Jerusalem. They have been digging there since the 60s. They had teams from Sweden at the time in the 60s, and European archaeologists and others, and then Israelis joined, trying to find a coin, a stone, something to be linked with Solomon's temple. They haven't found anything. And then, of course, they fabricate stuff. Oh, we found an arrow that might be old, and stuff like that. And they still haven't found anything to link Solomon's temple with Al-Aqsa, and likewise with Lebanon. So he found his demise today in Lebanon. But it didn't just end there. Hezbollah today, they targeted Sdoud, or what Israel calls Ashdod. Occupied Sdoud. In specific, the Hatzur base. It's called the Hatzur base, east of occupied Sdoud. That's 150 kilometers down. That's south to Tel Aviv. You're reaching like that. Hezbollah already sent a missile to Ma'ale Adumim near Jerusalem, and they cut off the electricity. We shared it at the time back then. But now they're making it normal to reach deeper into occupied territories. And Israel, again, they have no answer. And we had this confirmation coming from Hezbollah about this attack yesterday. The Mujahideen of the Islamic resistance continue their heroic resistance to the attempts of the Israeli enemy to advance in the villages and the boards occupied Palestine to target the positions, bases, and gatherings of soldiers within the framework of the Battle of the Brave in defense of Lebanon. And they're calling it the Khaybar operations. And of course, they mentioned this attack on Golani. And of course, it wasn't just the man who was killed, this archaeologist, it was other people too. And here they posted a video about their attack on one of the northern parts in occupied Palestine. So this is the main command, one of the main command bases for Golani, by the way.
חכה על 11 כרגע נפילה.
These attacks are about to cause Israel or lead Israel to declare the region of Naharia a region that has to be evacuated, because this area has been attacked so much. It's just north to Acre, and it has been bombarded, this area, very many times, and they are continuing to target it on a daily basis. And the thing is, again, there is no answer. There is no answer. Here, Hezbollah also published another video targeting gatherings, soldier gatherings in Al-Marj base next to the borders, with Lebanon, because they attack the Israeli forces before they go in many cases. They monitor where they are, and they start attacking them. So all of that is happening from many parts in Lebanon. And again, Israel has no answer. They have no answer whatsoever to Hezbollah when it comes to their missiles, to a level where they are about to declare more areas in the northern parts so far, but deeper into Israeli territories, as areas that need to be evacuated immediately. And clearly, nothing is changing when it comes to Hezbollah and the path of negotiations. And they previously declared, we are open to negotiations, but we don't rely on the negotiations because they have a rich experience with the negotiators. Usually you're talking about the United States administration, and the US administration would come and give the Lebanese threats in general, threaten them with bigger retaliation from Israel. So therefore, Hezbollah constantly continue down the path of resistance alongside the negotiating path. Which leads me to the next subject, Gaza. I mean, what haven't we said about what Israel is conducting in the north part of Gaza? The worst crimes anyone can imagine. The worst crimes you can imagine. Starvation, mass killing, targeting refugee shelters, targeting people when they're fleeing, targeting hospitals, leaving people's bodies, targeting healthcare staff and emergency services, not allowing them to reach bodies of people from the ground to a level where animals eat their bodies. Beyond comprehension. It's beyond comprehension what's happening. And no matter how much you talk, it's not enough to describe what's happening. Yet you still have Al-Qassam brigades targeting genocide soldiers. Today they said, confirming we eliminated 15 Israeli soldiers from point zero in Beit Lahia. Beit Lahia is one of the most northern parts of Gaza, closest to the borders of Israel, the occupied territories, near Beit Hanun, north to Jabalia even. Beit Lahia, and it's an area that has been destroyed. Now, usually when Al-Qassam Brigade say we eliminated them, they will verify that. They have verified the fact that they actually eliminated them. Why? Because they usually say we targeted them. We targeted them. If they targeted tank, we targeted, we hit it, or we destroyed it completely. And so when they confirm that they took down 15 Zionist genocide soldiers, right, in Beit Lahia. And that was in a direct confrontation, by the way. Al-Qassam said in a military statement via its Telegram channel, our fighters were able to engage an Israeli force of 15 soldiers and eliminated them from point zero in the Beit Lahia square area north of the Gaza Strip. And they confirmed that they are continuing to confront the occupation forces. One thing that we are noticing, by the way, in recent weeks is the fact that simultaneously, with the increase of the Israeli barbarism in North Gaza, we had an increase when it comes to the armed resistance against them. How? Clearly, they have exceptional ways to cope and to adapt to the new reality that has been imposed on them, which is a reality of basically total destruction and starvation, banning anything from getting in. But clearly they have been able to plan ahead and establish themselves. And I shared videos of some of them still digging even more tunnels now in Gaza to continue to fight the genocide forces in Gaza, indicating that even the highest levels of bombardment when it comes to Gaza are not effective. And that, again, what does that tell you? That Israel is constantly failing and is unable to do anything that will harm the capabilities of the resistance. And the whole campaign is targeting the civilians of Gaza rather than Hamas, by the way, or the Palestinian armed resistance movements. They are constantly talking about or targeting the civilians in Gaza, and they are not able to touch the resistance that is taking down every single genocide force as soon as they find them. That's the third thing, really, that I wanted to talk to you about. And then the final thing that I wanted to talk to you about. Joe Biden allowed Zelensky to use these advanced missiles, attack MS missiles, deep into Russian territories. And now we had the response from Russia using KINZHAAL and I think X-101 or something, another type of missile, deep into Ukrainian territories. And Vladimir Putin saying that we have the right to target any country that is supporting Ukraine with this escalation. Now, there have been assumptions that, and I'll share a video with you of some of these missiles, by the way. There have been assumptions that Joe Biden is trying to max out up until he finishes his job, basically, and Donald Trump comes in, because there are certain indications that Donald Trump will stop this unconditional funding for Zelensky. However, that is a very dangerous game, because when you're talking about Russia, you're talking about a very powerful country. And despite all of that, Putin is still trying to have an open channel with them, but it doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. Now, this can be considered as you attacked, we responded, let's see how you continue. But if the Zelensky forces continue, we might see something bigger. And I have one of these videos that I wanted to share with you here about the landing. So these were the landings of the Russian missiles that Putin has been using now for the first time in Ukraine, indicating that there is a level of escalation, but the action coming from Zelensky following this will dictate most likely what happens next, whether he continues down the same path after the United States allowed him to, or he stops and they call it a day between them and Russia now, up until they potentially reach a ceasefire or a final peace agreement. Because don't forget, back in July, they were very close to a complete ceasefire that the Russian side wanted to make a permanent peace agreement. However, after that, the Zelensky forces started the escalation in Kursk, and things started to deteriorate again, which led to increased attacks coming from Russia too. That escalated the situation. And then, of course, Zelensky had the approval to use these missiles. So if they don't respond, then Putin could potentially call it a day. But if they do, we could be looking at something far worse, which could be very dangerous as well.